Hello and welcome to this interview with Jeff Harr. How are you doing, Jeff?
Oh, I'm doing great, thanks.
He is the developer at, or a developer, should I say, at Black Liquid, who are a modding team on the game Banished, which is a city building strategy game for the PC. So, first of all, Jeff, can you tell me how Black Liquid formed?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was back in, I believe it was September 2014, and I was playing Banished. I don't know how long it had been out at that point, but probably not that long. And I ran across it on Steam sale or something like that and grabbed it and started playing it. And immediately kind of saw the potential that the game had to be extended. And I always wondered if Luke had kind of left it that way, eyeing future kind of expansions. But, I immediately applied sort of my interest in history and my education in that area to going, well, perfect engine to simulate like a colonial era, historical reenactment type of thing. And at the time, there were a lot of modders on the scene. I hadn't done any actual modding myself, but I started talking to a few of the ones that were active on the website. I think it was the Citadel. I don't remember where we met, but I basically just started talking to one of the modders who goes by Kraljurg. I think that's his username, and he was making mods that were changing some stuff, but I kind of went over my ideas with him, and he actually started making them. So there we were, where he had some free energy, and I had some free ideas, and we started making some of the very early versions of the mod that we were calling. I don't even think we were calling it Colonial Charter at that point. But anyway, we eventually, started communicating more directly, and then we met some other modders in the scene, and one of them, Shock Puppet, was making the town, I think it was town and textiles mod, and it kind of overlapped in some areas we wanted to go, and we said, why don't we talk to this guy? And he ended up just joining the team, and we suddenly realized that we had a team of people with a bunch of different files and a bunch of ideas, and we could make it all, one thing. And we actually, started making it a point to try to unify what was out there and what our ideas were into a kind of a thematic story. And I think that's what Colonial Charter is.
So I guess it was a few different modders that were all doing different things, and then you guys kind of just came together and
Yeah,
decided to
I'm,
streamline it.
I'm just a player. So, I may be a modder now a little bit, but my main contributions were more of like the ideas and organizing things. And it's funny how it just came out of all of our love of playing the game.
So can you tell me what your thoughts are on the vanilla Banished? Like, what did you think when you played it for the first time?
Yeah, so I guess Spanish scratches a lot of itches for me. I sort of love the kind of high strategy, like aerial view. Like I get to organize a town and like, make it work as best that I can. And I think that strikes a chord with a lot of gamers out there that play this type of game. I have a lot of hours in stuff like Europa Universalis. I really like to kind of like make my mark on history. And honestly, like I started to kind of explore game capabilities more than actually play their vanilla games after a while. I kind of were using them as tools to kind of enable my own alternative, you know, what if I did this sort of fantasies. So I think Banished really struck a chord in that, hey, we can grow whatever crop we want. Whatever, we can raise whatever animal we want. We can architect this town however we want to do it. And I started to really salivate sort of about the potential that it had when I got to the point where I was building cities all the time that would lag my computer out because they had so many citizens. Um, so yeah, I mean, Banished Vanilla was awesome for a long time, but I think that the developer Luke, kind of always intended it to be modded. So I believe there were mods from day one, and I think that's one of the other things that really attracted me to it.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe the vanilla Banished could have been a bit more sort of larger scale with more buildings to choose from? Or do you think that people could go back and play vanilla Banished and it would be just as enjoyable without the Colonial Charter mod or any other
Well,
mods?
yeah, I mean, you can answer that question a couple of ways. Do I think that a guy with a lot of talents developing a game by himself and spreading that talent out among all the different pieces of the game, from the engine to the artwork to the buildings to the copywriting to all of that, no, I think he released it at probably a really good point in his personal journey on that game for it to make a lot of sense. But like, would a lot of Colonial Charter players be able to go back and play vanilla? I mean, probably not, honestly. Like, I don't think I can. And it's just because I think we get used to, like, have you ever played a game that you've uninstalled all the DLC for and then gone back and play? You don't. Like, I think our mod was always supposed to be DLC for Banished, and not its own different game.
Yeah, I think I see it that way as well. Yeah.
And especially that's how we released it. We broke everything into thematic chunks, and I have this giant spreadsheet somewhere. It's like a huge thing, color coded, messes all over it. We have somewhere records of like everything that everyone gave us and who they were, and that they authorized it and all that stuff. So because early on it was a conglomeration of a bunch of stuff, and people were like, "Oh, hey, can you throw our thing in there?" And then it all just worked together. But we released it in thematic chunks with names, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, Maple Harpoon, and all that, our old names for the releases. And we did that because we always viewed it as additional content, like, in like a DLC releasing schedule. So
So, what was the very first thing that you wanted to add to Banished? You personally, and also the Black Liquid team.
mine's easy, flags.
Yeah.
And I hand chose all those flags, and I actually think I made some of them. I did some light like image work, and I wrote a lot of copy, and came up with a lot of the research. But I think those are one of the things that I actually contributed some of the actual files that people play with. So I always thought that was kind of cool that I made. I think I did Denmark's flag. But anyway, those flags that we chose were the original ones were all historical colonizers of the New World, and even lesser known ones in the spirit of accuracy. So originally we wanted it to be a hyper accurate kind of simulation well, not a simulation, but from a historical standpoint. We didn't want to leave anything out or make any mistakes, because you don't have to. You can put as many flags as you want in there. So the original ones were the colonial nations, including like the Duchy of Courland and the Knights of Malta and stuff like that. I think Crowlier's main stuff that he wanted to add was like different variety for texturing in the towns, and like he wanted different trees, and his mods. He has a section of our website colonialcharter.com where he releases his own mods, and a lot of them are cool. And he has like rainbow colored trees for one of them, like purple and bright yellow and things like that. So he's always liked kind of like I think the more artsy side of it, and then Shock immediately started making buildings and expanding the textile thing. I think that's what his mod originally was just a textiles mod, because I think, as you probably know, and a lot of the listeners or readers would know, there's always been an issue with the textile flag, and it doesn't work correctly, so it makes it very difficult to mod. And I believe his early mod was a workaround for that.
So, could you explain some of the hard-coded limitations to modding Banished? And do you think maybe it won't be long before modders reach those limits?
Well, that's an interesting question. For me particularly, I don't commit code to the repository, and I don't necessarily do any scripting, so I'm not extremely up on the limitations. The textile flag was one that I remembered, and the inability to add more flags. So let me see if I can kind of get this. The main problem we had to run into is that the only way to go forward is to add more production right? And one of my design criteria for the mod was that everything has a purpose beyond itself. So we're not just going to add a material into the game that functions like wood or iron but isn't used by anything. And we're not going to create an industrial crop whose product is inedible and it only has one use at one building where you can also do other stuff instead. Like those things are dead ends for the player, and they make things pointless and unwieldy. So one of the things I'm proudest of with CC is that we tried to keep everything useful all the time and make a reason to do everything. Either this alternative is cheaper, but you get less, or always have a reason why the player might choose something else. So the limitations you run into now are that we can't add any more materials, right? There's only so many flags, and we don't have the ability to add new flags, so we can't add categories of things, and that's important if you want to do, if you want to have a different storage slot for that thing in material storage or a barn or something like that, or if you want to handle it differently as far as combining things or game rules go. Another one of the things we ran into all the time was that I think you have to have, or you can have a maximum of 3 inputs at a building, and the output has to be one thing. And don't quote me on that, but there's a limitation around like how many inputs you can have and how many outputs you can have. And I know Crowyer came up with a really clever way one time to cycle the outputs, and that's how we get things that produce buildings that produce multiple things. But those are really limited because they have to be on a equal cycle, and you can kind of weight the cycle, but it's hacky. You have to like put a bunch of entries in for each item to kind
I think it's the dairy, and it's like milk, cheese, and something else maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And what I would have loved to have done is have a totally different mechanic for butter with different weights and values. But the thing about the input cycle is that they all have to have a relation to the same input value. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but basically it's like if we wanted to balance how expensive it is to make one of the things in the cycle versus other things, that's very difficult to do with the way that we made it work. And the reason is because we're at like 3rd level of not intended at that point. It wasn't intended to cycle, so it certainly wasn't intended to balance outputs as it cycles.
I'm sure you get many requested features on the Colonial Charter forums. So what's the craziest feature someone has requested, or something you thought would maybe make the game worse rather than better?
Well, I think there was a debate among the users and also internally about including things like prostitution, drug use, vices, we like cult sacrifices, things like that. We've had all kinds of things suggested, and some of those came from people on our team. So, I think the cursed llama statue is about as close as we got to something like that, and it's because the mechanic that hadn't really been explored yet is a building that just sheds you of extra population with a potential incentive of a rare treasure. But yeah, I think it's definitely things around like we'd love a building for prostitution or something like that. And there was a couple of times where we talked about it as a team, and we didn't want to represent. I didn't want to introduce that into such a kind of idyllic little atmosphere, and I didn't think it was appropriate. And I was trying to think about all the players, of all types who, while some might find it enjoyable, it might really, make it not fun for people to play. So I think we ended up leaving a lot of that stuff out.
Yeah. And have there been any requested features that have become like quite a big part of Colonial Charter?
Oh, definitely. I mean, most of the early stuff was stuff that we thought of, but eventually, well, I won't say that. We kind of had a comprehensive plan, and there was very rarely somebody had suggested something that we A, hadn't put in or planned to put in, B, hadn't thought about a million ways to try to do it within the limitations of the game and realized it wouldn't be able to be done in a way that was fun, or C, wasn't going to include for some other reason. So I'm trying to think of something that we hadn't thought of that we ended up going, that's a great idea, and including it. Um, there's probably tons of things that I'm really doing people some disservice here by not remembering, but I think the smaller tavern might have been one, and things like that started to save footprint that we hadn't necessarily thought about. And there were some F variants that I think people had requested, like a Dutch church. One of our churches is Dutch, and we had modded in a Swedish church as an F variant to the, I think it's Swedish, an F variant to the vanilla church, and they requested a Dutch one, and I think we ended up doing it. And I think maybe even they sent us the model. I don't remember exactly how that went, but we were often getting contributions from people, whether it was in ideas or actual artwork sometimes, and we have a record of all of that somewhere.
I'm interested to know about the textures in the game because I think the game looks really nice as it is, but I feel like it could be upgraded. But I don't see many texture mods coming to the forefront really. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the textures always like did what we needed them to do. Shock's like a wizard with texturing and image work, but none of us are like, professional graphics engineers or anything. So I think we were quite happy just to work within the limitations of what was there. And I think everything that Shock ever put into the game was on par or perhaps better looking than some of the vanilla stuff. As great as the vanilla stuff was, that's just how nice I feel like he did with a lot of the texturing of the models that we had. So um, towards the more recent time frame, we've had a lot of artists on our team, and I think it's waned back down now. But for a long time, there were also other great people contributing a lot of art and models and sprites. So I didn't often hear like a complaint about limitations around the textures. So I think we were pretty happy with it.
So do you think that Banished will be a game that people will be playing 10 or 20 years from now?
Well, I'll say this: I hope not. Right? Like I hope Banished 4 or whatever is out, or I hope that we've had the time to release our own game by then. Because I think that what the developer hit upon with this is a different way to think about these kinds of games, and I think that the sky's the limit with some of this. It's like the trade-off between a game being simple and pretty, and a game being like accurate and intense. And I think that Banished has always been able to toe that line. So I would hope by then that either our game or a similar game has really explored things like all the people have relationships that make sense, that are trackable and family units, and you can click a button and see the family tree of everybody that ever lived in the entire town. Um, Things like multiple factions of people, maybe some human controlled, maybe some not, that coexist together on the same map. Maybe a map that is not just one city. It's a whole nation, and you can zoom in at the city level. I mean, with the technology that we have now, and the direction that Banished has kicked us off into, I would hope that we have an amazing game to play in 20 years. But if not, I think Banished doesn't need to prove itself further. It's really had a lot of longevity, more than I ever thought, honestly. And it's pretty awesome to see that there are tons of players, and people always talk about it on Reddit during Steam sales and things. So it's pretty incredible. But yeah, I hope we're playing a game that I made in 20 years.
So moving on then, what does the future hold for Black Liquid?
Yeah, so we intend to at least periodically maintain and maybe incrementally update Colonial Charter, but I think 95% of its features are complete. And I don't expect our team, given our current trajectory, to really want to do like a huge new overhaul or something, barring a major change from the developer himself on capabilities or something or an expansion. Um, we are currently kind of kicking around. We have a pretty good concept worked out for a game kind of built on the foundations of a Banished and a Europa Universalis and Age of Empires kind of dealio. But we don't. Our team doesn't have an engine person. We don't have true scripting engineers. We don't have people that know Unity or anything like that. And I think our little group is mostly artists and idea people and hobby, modders. If we wanted to make our own game, we'd have to kind of figure out a way to acquire that talent and coordinate it and somehow figure out a whole business side of this stuff that we never did with just modding something in our spare time for fun. But I'd really love to do that, so we'll see. The other thing we're kicking around doing is potentially modding a new game for a while. We haven't really settled on anything. I think Stellaris is maybe a candidate. But, again, it's going to be dependent on all of us feeling like spending our energy and time on it in our free time, because none of us are do this for our day job. And while I'd love to continue making stuff with those guys, it'll have to be something that feels good.
So, other than Banished, what are some similar games that you're fond of?
I loved City Skylines for a long time. I don't play it actively right now, but most of my hours are in things like Europa Universalis 4, Crusader Kings 2. I got the new Hearts of Iron, and I have mixed feelings about it. I played a lot of Starbound. Kind of try to play the nightlies of that when I get a chance, because it's really I don't know if you know much about Starbound, but the nightlies are so far ahead of where the stable branch is. It's like a totally different game. Yeah, Victoria 2, I had tons of hours, and I kind of like the Total War series a little bit, and I play GTA with my friends and my brother. But I know
Wow.
the guys on our team also play Stellaris, and some of them play um, GTA and things like that too.
Your thoughts on Age of Empires? Which one's the best?
Oh man, which Age of I'm old though, dude. I'm so old. Man, oh,
Because it's a very contested position. Like, a lot of people say it's Age of Empires 2. A
that's
lot of
the one I
people,
remember. I mean, I
yeah.
think that's the one where I mean, I don't know how I could describe it any differently to you, but mainly the thing I remember about it is that each civilization kind of had a color theme to their buildings, um, and you could cheat and get like a like a Mustang or something with like machine guns on it.
That was Age of Empires 3, I think.
Three, okay,
Yeah, you could get like a monster truck that would just run over everything.
okay. It wasn't a
Uh,
monster
may-
truck. It was a little black car with machine guns. So,
Maybe there was a similar thing in Age of Empires 2 then.
so I'm
I
pretty sure that
never.
was the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
like Windows 5.
So, have you played a game called Villagers? Um, the game that claims it's not ripping off Banished, but it actually is.
No, I haven't played it, but I saw a lot of posts about it on our forums and on the Reddit, and you know, this is the world we live in. Kudos. I wish I'd figured out a way to get compensated for our mod. I don't really. We wanted to do it because we were players, but it's funny when you see people making money off of stuff that other people make, and you're not even making money off stuff you make.
Yeah, I read a very strange blog post on their website that basically said reasons we are not like Banished, and then it listed loads of mechanics that are just in Banished. So it was quite bizarre. One final question.
Sure.
It's a quickie. Are you planning on an option to remove the classical music, the Colonial Charter theme tune?
I mean, hey, if they want it, we'll. I'm sure people can ask on our forums. Is that
I'll do that then.
okay? The idea
It's
was originally to mod the whole music, but it's another limitation that we couldn't mod the music inside the game, only in the menu.
Is that just because of the colonial theme of the game? You thought it would be a better fit? Is
Yeah,
that why?
we were gonna have period music. I had ripped an entire bunch of music from that actual era we were trying to emulate, which was I think the 1760s, and it was supposed to be it would cycle in the main menu, and then it would be in an arranged kind of pattern with a ebb and flow through the whole game like the actual game music is. But because of limitations, we could only do one track in the menu, and that was the one that we went with. So
Yeah, that makes a bit more sense, yeah. I just really think that the original Banished soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks ever, so when I hear that classical music, it kind of is jarring to me because
yeah,
it's totally different to the other music,
I
really.
think you should be able to delete it out of the mod file. I'll talk to Crowley and we'll get a version released without the music.
Ah, thanks very much.
No worries.
Well, thanks a lot for talking to me. It's been great. That was Jeff Harr of Black Liquid and the Colonial Charter mod for Banished. Please do check it out because it's an amazing game and an amazing mod. And you guys have done a really good job on that.
Hey, appreciate it. A lot of guys worked real hard. Guys and gals worked real hard on our team. So kudos to all of them.